The alarm cut through the lecture hall before I even felt the ship shudder. My skin went white with panic, and I hated it, because white means fear to every species in the coalition, and fear in front of 40 cadets is worse than any wound. The simulation pod around us groaned, red light spilling across the control panel, and the instructor's voice cracked through the speakers, telling us the docking clamp had failed, and we had 90 seconds before hull separation. 90 seconds. That number would not leave my head. I am Kessa Vrenthal, and I have spent 3 terms at the Coalition Fleet Academy, being the cadet nobody sits beside. My people speak through color. Our skin shifts with what we feel, and there is no hiding it, no lying, no polite mask to wear over grief or fear or shame. In my first term, my colors betrayed a private sorrow in the middle of a crowded exam hall, and the other cadets never let me forget it. Since then, I have eaten alone, studied alone, and answered every question in class with my head down, hoping no one would notice the blue creeping up my neck. But 90 seconds does not care about any of that. The pod rocked again. Beside me, a human cadet named Callum Ashford grabbed the edge of the console to steady himself, and instead of looking away from my flooding colors like everyone else did, he looked straight at them. "Kessa," he said, calm as still water, "what does white mean when it spreads like that, all the way to your shoulders?" Nobody had ever asked me that, not once. 3 terms, and nobody had ever asked what my own body was telling them. "It means the danger is real," I said, "not simulated. My skin does not know the difference between practice and truth." Callum turned to the instructor's voice crackling through the speaker. "She says this isn't a drill anymore. Something actually failed." The instructor's voice sharpened. "Impossible. This is a level 2 docking simulation. There is no live fault." I looked down at the panel, and my hands were already moving before my mind caught up. 3 terms of navigation theory, 3 terms of studying failure patterns until I could see them in my sleep, and I saw it now, buried under the simulated numbers. A real power spike in the clamp relay, the kind that only happens when actual metal fatigues, not when a computer pretends it does. "It's real," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. The simulation borrowed power from the actual docking system to run its own scenario, and it triggered a genuine fault in Relay 4. We are not pretending to lose the clamp. We are losing it. Every cadet in that hall turned to stare at me, and for the first time in 3 terms, I did not shrink from it. Callum did not hesitate. He had transferred in only 2 weeks earlier, the first human ever accepted into our cohort, and already half the academy had opinions about him. They said humans were loud. They said humans were reckless, that their species had barely learned to speak to each other in one language before demanding a seat among the stars. They said humans could not be trusted with delicate diplomatic situations because they moved too fast and felt too much. Watching him now, none of that mattered. He turned to the room and raised his voice so every cadet could hear him over the sirens. "She's the only one in this room who actually reads that panel instead of the training script," Callum said. "If Kessa says Relay 4 is failing for real, then it is failing for real, and every second we spend arguing is a second we lose." The room went silent except for the alarm. I do not know why his words landed the way they did. Maybe because he said them without doubt, the way you state a fact of gravity. Maybe because for 2 weeks he had done small, strange things that no one else at the academy had bothered to do. He asked me questions about my color language instead of flinching from it. He sat beside me at meals without being asked, without making it a performance of kindness, simply because the seat was open and I was in it. When another cadet named Priya Nakamura once mimicked my panicked colors in front of a study group to get a laugh, Callum had not shouted or postured. He had simply asked Priya, in front of everyone, why she needed to make someone else small to feel steady herself. Priya had gone quiet and never tried it again. It was not a rescue. It was worse for her, and better for me, because it was true. Now, with the clamp failing and the clock burning down, Callum turned back to me. "Tell me what to do." I looked at the panel again, and something in me settled, the way water settles when you stop stirring it. The training protocol said to vent the docking bay and abandon the clamp, a standard failure response. But the training protocol was built for a simulated fault, not a real one. And a real fault in Relay 4 meant the vent sequence would ignite the leaking coolant instead of clearing it. "Do not vent the bay," I said. The protocol will kill us if we follow it. We need to reroute power from the secondary array directly into the clamp motor, manually, before the relay burns out completely. If we do that, the clamp will hold long enough for the docking arm to disengage safely. How long do we have? Callum asked. I watched the numbers ticking down. 40 seconds. He did not ask if I was certain. He turned to the two cadets nearest the auxiliary controls, a quiet Vantari boy named Doran and a human girl named Bridget Malone, who had barely spoken to anyone all term, and he told them exactly what Kessa needed, calm and fast, like he had done this 100 times before, though I knew he had not, because none of us had. Doran, cut power to the environmental loop. We don't need air scrubbers right now. We need amps. Bridget, stand by the secondary array switch, and the second Kessa gives the word, you throw it. They moved. Nobody argued. Nobody questioned why a transfer student who had been at the academy for 2 weeks was suddenly directing a room full of senior cadets. They moved because his voice held no doubt, and doubt is contagious, but so is certainty, and in that moment, his certainty was the only steady thing in the room. I traced the power lines on the panel, feeling my colors shift again, not to white this time, but to a focused amber, the color my people use when we are working, when we are close to solving something. 20 seconds. I found the junction point where the secondary array met the clamp motor circuit, a connection meant only for emergency use, one I had read about in a footnote of a navigation manual months ago and never expected to need. There, I said, pointing, that junction. Bridget, when I say now, throw the switch there, not at the main breaker. That's not what the diagram shows, Bridget said, and I heard the fear in her voice, the same fear I had lived with for 3 terms, the fear of being wrong in front of everyone. The diagram is for the simulation, I said. This is real steel and real coolant, and I have read the actual specifications for this ship, not the training version. Trust the ship, not the lesson plan. 10 seconds. Callum looked at me, and something passed between us that needed no color and no word, only the plain fact of trust freely given. Do it, he said to Bridget. Now. Bridget threw the switch. For 1 terrible second, nothing happened, and I felt my skin flush toward white again, certain I had misread the schematic, certain I had killed us all with my own arrogance. Then the relay hummed, the red light on the panel flickered to amber, and the shuddering stopped. The docking arm disengaged with a mechanical sigh instead of a violent tear, and the alarm cut off, leaving only the sound of 40 cadets breathing hard in the sudden quiet. The instructor's voice returned through the speaker, no longer sharp with correction, but rough with something like shock. Diagnostic confirms a genuine relay failure in Bay 4. Cadets, that was not scripted. You just handled a real fault using an improvised solution. Nobody cheered. We were all too stunned. But I noticed something in that silence that had never happened to me before. Cadets were looking at me, not with pity or mockery, but with something closer to respect, and nobody stepped back when my colors shifted, this time toward a soft, warm gold, the shade my people wear when relief finally arrives. Doran was the first to speak. How did you know about that junction point? I read the manual for fun, I admitted, and a few cadets actually laughed, not at me, but with me. A sound I had almost forgotten the shape of. Later, in the mess hall, I sat at my usual table near the back, expecting the silence to return the way it always had. But Callum sat down across from me first, without asking, the way he always did. Then Bridget sat beside him, and Doran took the seat next to me, and within a few minutes, the table that had been mine alone for 3 terms was full, loud, and warm, with conversation about relay junctions and simulation glitches, and whether the instructors would ever admit how close we had actually come to real danger. I did not say much. I did not need to. My skin was doing the talking for me, a steady gold that did not fade, even as the conversation moved on to other things, other cadets, other stories that had nothing to do with me at all. Callum caught my eye once across the table and gave a small nod, as if to say he understood exactly what that gold meant, even without a translator, even without a single word passing between us. I thought about the first day he sat beside me, when he could have chosen any open seat in that lecture hall, and instead chose the one next to the cadet nobody wanted. I used to think humans were strange, for how loudly they felt things, how quickly they spoke their minds, how little patience they had for pretending. Now I understood it differently. They did not perform calm the way the rest of us had learned to. They simply chose, plainly and without hesitation, who mattered to them, and then they stayed. 3 terms of silence had taught me that being different meant being alone. 2 weeks with Callum Ashford taught me that being different only meant being alone, until someone finally chose to sit down beside you and stay there, through the ordinary days and the 90-second ones alike. For the first time since I arrived at the academy, I did not eat alone, and I did not want to.